Welcome, everyone. Delighted to have you here for the webinar today. We'll start shortly after the half hour. In the meantime, please feel free to introduce yourselves, where you're calling in from, and we will be engaging with you shortly. Thank you, Teresa. Russ, welcome. We will be welcome, everyone. We'll be starting momentarily. Please feel free to again fully introduce yourselves in chat. People.
All right.
Oh, go ahead.
We'll get started. Looks like we're at 12:30 here. So hi, everybody. My name is Brian Adolph Krentar, and I'm the CEO of SchoolSims. I'm sure you guys have all seen some emails from me and a few of the other people that will be talking today. This is our first Q&A session for clients. So we really want to try to get some feedback. We'll let you know a little bit about what we've been up to in the last few months, what new simulations are coming out, so what you can expect for the new school year. And most importantly, try to get some feedback from you guys. What do you like about the product? What would you like to see inside of the product? What can we do to help you? It's really important for us to get that feedback and understand what you need, because that sort of drives our product decisions. That could be simulation based. It could be inside the SchoolSims Portal or otherwise. So today you'll hear from Ken Spiro, our founder and president, and also Brent Colson, who is our expert in client experience. So Ken, I'll turn it over to you to kick things off. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. And it's delightful to have you all here. And really just to give you an update, but also just to interact. I mean, it's really important for us to, as most of you know, right, the power of SIM is in the opportunity to engage in conversation, in sharing perspectives. That goes for the activity itself, but obviously it's beneficial at this level too, in terms of thinking about the ways that they can be used, new things that we can do, as Brian mentioned. So just to start things off, so again, encourage you all, please, if you have questions, comments, things you'd like to have answered, or you'd like to share, please put it in chat, let us know, and we'll make time for it, or we'll respond to it. So please, your insights are greatly appreciated, and we're looking forward to them. But did want to give you a quick update in terms of the new Sims. As you probably know, we are always in the process of developing something. But just to give you a sense of the things that we've released within the last 12 months, if you haven't taken a look at the full library, if you're implementing and didn't take stock of what's new coming in. So first of all, as you know, we have libraries now on the leadership, we have teachers, we have counselors, and we now have student Sims as well. And so we have been developing along each of those. So in the leadership, we've launched Improving STEM Achievement, which is actually a superintendent sim, but looking at the implementation of a STEM program. And then two within there are counselors and also leadership, but Advanced Program Dilemma, which was kind of equity-centered counseling, and Planning for Student Achievement, which dealt with issues relating to truancy and absenteeism. And so those from the leadership perspective. On the teacher side, we launched supporting classroom mental health, applying effective classroom management, both in terms of dealing with, I think they're both actually at the middle school level, and respect in the classroom. We've also launched an independent school library. So we created versions of the Star Athlete Classroom Challenges and Improving STEM Achievement for independent schools. And then on the student side, so these are actually simulated at, the role that you take on is at the student level in high school. Dealing with vaping is one that we just completed, and cheating is another one. We have another one that, if you're not familiar with it, on bullying, actually another one on civic engagement, where actually we'd be interested in feedback from folks. Our thinking is that these were actually used for students within a charter school in Texas, folk that has an element of leadership in their curriculum. But we're thinking that they could be of value for teachers as well, from a perspective taking perspective. Sorry, too many using the words perspective, but the opportunity to see things through the student lens and what are the implications to you as a teacher. So if that's something that you'd like to explore more about, we'd love to hear some feedback on that, because we'd like to frame these so that they're easier to use and not just put them into the library, because they might get there might be a lack of understanding about that application. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that, relative to the benefits to those of you who are focusing at teachers, actually for principals too, the opportunity to see things through the lens of students for Sims that were actually designed at the student level. Any thoughts, questions? And please feel free to unmute and chime in if you have a question. So these are all available. So for those of you who know about the simulation overviews, hopefully you've all taken a look at these, but these are, this is where you can see, this is available as the documents. When you hit the landing page for a sim that you've introduced, there is there are documents. We have the facilitator guide, and you have the simulation overviews, or you can email Brent and get a copy of it. But here we have all the latest sims will be posted here with the one-pagers that follow. So this, again, if you're not familiar with this, it's a wonderful resource for using the libraries. So we can actually just get leadership, or just teachers, or just counselors, in terms of not having an overwhelming number of sims. But this is a good way to prepare if you want, or if you're handing it off to faculty or people within the district who are going to be delivering the sims, to just get a sense or a review of what's embedded in the sim. So it's an important resource to be able to take care of that. But one of the things that, as we think about what's going on in Sims, so this is just a little bit of idea sharing, if you will, that's kind of that's not been on my mind. But one of the things that I struggle with over the years, for those of you who have not heard me say this, but I've been doing simulations for 35 years now. So I'm pretty far down my rabbit hole, and for the life of me, I can't understand why everybody isn't simulating, right? We know that experience is the best teacher, and we know that simulations approximate experience. So why isn't everybody simulating, especially in this the context of education, where there is so much uncertainty, right? And in being able to, the only thing, in fact, that's certain about the education space is the uncertainty, right? Because every time you face something, even with the same students, with the same staff members, with the same parents, with the same community members, right? It's going to be different every time. And the best we can do is be thoughtful. So when you think about what is it that keeps people from simulation, and my current hypothesis is that it is about this issue of certainty. That the flip side of we love certainty is that we really hate uncertainty, right? And in fact, there is within the realms of behavioral economics and other elements of neuroscience, there have been studies and research around uncertainty aversion or ambiguity aversion, that we actually do really dislike it. And I think that that is kind of a force field that's around simulation. By its nature, actually embodies uncertainty. That's the goal, right? We're going to put you in a situation in which you're facing a problem of practice, you're not sure what to do, and you're going to have to make a decision. And you're not certain what's going to happen with the decision that you make, but you got to do it anyway. And what happens is there's this vicious cycle of where uncertainty aversion, we have a negativity bias. If we actually don't know what's going to happen, we actually sometimes have a tendency, or some people do, to be able to start thinking that it's going to go badly, which leads to catastrophizing, which means, oh my God, it's going to be horrible and I'm going to have a terrible day. And it feeds on itself. And what we're looking to do with simulation is to put a pause in this, right? We're not going to create certainty, right? That's not doable. But what we can create is, let's call it self-efficacy. Let's call it, I've been here, I've done this kind of thing before. And so it takes a little bit of that uncertainty, a little bit of that ambiguity away, because I don't know what's going to happen, but I have some confidence in my ability to face it. And so utilizing this modality to address some of that uncertainty, to allow for that feeling that I can handle what's coming, which is good for well-being, as well as one's ability to be thoughtful, right? So we don't get into that amygdala hijack and fight or flight, that we can mitigate that to some degree. This is the kind of thing we're trying to address. And so within the realm of the simulations, for those of you who have not seen them, I did want to share with you just some of the tools that we've started to integrate that, if you haven't seen them, again, that we've embedded them in the Sims, but also to encourage you to think about the ways that you can encourage this kind of thinking, even when the Sim doesn't prompt it directly, right? Because you can prompt it on your own, either with, if you're doing it asynchronously with an asynchronous prompt or in a session. But this is, so I've opened up a couple of Sims just to show you some of the things that are going on. This is the leading STEM. In the middle of the simulation, you're going to have to, which of the following strategies we recommend? Again, you have no context, but I really just wanted to show you what comes next.
Surprised at the reaction that follows your recommendation for goals and team focus. In the ensuing silence, as team members look around the room at each other, you consider how confident you are in your suggestion.
So what we're actually prompting here is how certain. We want to allow for, we want to validate that when you're making a decision, you actually may feel uncertain. Well, okay, let's validate that. And so we can capture that. It doesn't change whether or not you have to make a decision, but we can actually capture the fact that you're uncertain and you're going to go ahead anyway. But so this is just a simple slide bar. Again, if you haven't seen it, it's simply the participants will choose where they are on the slide bar. The Sim does not react to this, but it does get captured. But this way, again, can facilitate discussion. It can be part of a prompt in which, what is it that you're uncertain about, right? That can be asked. So there are opportunities to engage from that perspective, and then it gets submitted, and the Sim will continue. Another example of that is this is the Star Athlete Sim. So this is kind of a bit of a moral dilemma, if you will, right? Where a student who's a star athlete is not performing well in your class as a teacher, and it's coming to the end of the semester and he's failing, but you got pressure from all over the place in terms of wanting to keep him, maintain his eligibility. And you've got the student who's feeling quite stressed out because he's going to be, his eligibility is going to lead to his getting scholarships. So you're dealing with him.
Following class.
He's going to come and talk to you.
So I'm a little behind in my.
And now you need to respond, right? So again, I'm sorry not to go deeply into it. You're obviously, you all have access to the, those of you interested who don't have access to the teacher Sims, please let us know. We're certainly happy to share them with you. But first, obviously, there's the opportunity for the open prompt, which is, what would you do? Before we give you choices, what's your thinking? And again, one of the things that's really, really important about this modality is the opportunity to get to critical thinking. Obviously, that is happening in the simulation when we prompt for decision making, but we can be prompting the critical thinking without the choices as well, right? So here's an opportunity to submit get the students thinking about what they would do in it before actually giving them choices. And again, as hopefully you know, this will be captured and placed into the feedback report for further reflection at the end. And I'll again show that an example of that.
Giving your decision to
now here we get to the actual choice where, what do? Do you stay firm to the deadline, provide them with a challenging assignment, allow flexibility for the deadline? We make a choice.
What is your rationale for this decision?
Again, an additional opportunity for Why are you doing this? Again, to get that critical thinking. One of the things in dealing with a dilemma is that we want to get at the underlying, we're not going to obviously capture, you're facing dilemmas all the time. We want to get at the thinking so that we can unpack some of that so it can be applied, the thinking approach can be applied to whatever the dilemma is.
The Model Code of Ethics.
But here's another opportunity to get at the slide bar, which is here highlighting what the Model Code of Ethics says about this kind of thing, and whether we agree this is even an ethical decision, and what's going on here, and what are the underpinnings in terms of, again, provoking additional thinking and or discussion, depending again how you're deploying. But the opportunity to utilize these, just wanted to make sure that you're aware that these tools are at play in the Sims. If you haven't seen them, and certainly if there are other places you'd like to see them, please let us know. The other one I wanted to encourage a look at is the issue, again, here's a prompt in the parent-teacher conference where we actually ask you, again, before, you're not actually going to have a decision about what you bring into a parent-teacher conference, but we want you thinking about what you would bring in. And then it'll lead into you'll get into the parent-teacher conference, because there's just too much. We don't want to limit the thinking by just giving you choices, because obviously that's contextual. But we do want you thinking about what you would bring in and why is it of value to the parents. And again, just being able to capture that aspect. And lastly, the one other thing we wanted to get at with the unpacking in terms of the validating, like we did with the uncertainty, is the emotions, right? And this is, in particular with teachers, because they are facing, and it happens with principals as well, although this has been in our evolution more, the newer Sims have been on the teacher side. But this is, you're getting a voicemail from a parent about something, and she mentioned something that's going on in an assignment for the kids. And, well, how does that make you feel? And so here we actually do prompt you with the actual emotions. And this gets at that, I think Brene Brown calls it emotional granularity, or she highlights it. I'm not sure that she came up with it. I think that she took it from somewhere else. But this idea of emotional granularity, that if we can actually name the emotions we're feeling, we maybe can take some of the air out of them. So here's an opportunity, especially for new teachers, where you may be freaking out based on you don't know how to deal with, and you're really getting into that vicious circle of the ambiguity aversion, leading into tying into the negativity bias, which allows to catastrophize. To validate that, yes, it's okay that you're feeling stressed here. Take a breath, because you don't want to act in that emotion, right? You want to be able to take a breath, have that pause, and then be thoughtful about the decision you're going to make. And obviously in the sim, we allow for that, and then you actually get to the decision making. So again, these are just tools that we have started to embed them more overtly in the Sims, but this is the kind of activity that can be done irrespective of whether we have it there, based on the objectives that you have inside of the broader objectives for when you're using the Sims, whether it's part of a curriculum from a higher ed perspective, whether it's part of a PD or professional learning, whether it's an assignment for folks in either perspective, either in the district or in higher ed. So it's really just to highlight this idea that the goal here is not to provide certainty, right? We're not teaching you the answer, right? Often we get that response from, just tell me what to do. Just tell me what I'm supposed to, right? Well, that's not the point, right? So it's an opportunity to provoke critical thinking even beyond what's in, because they're already tenderized, if you will, within the context of being engaged in an experience, in the narrative flow, right? You've got the student engagement, and then there's an opportunity to do with it in what you please in service of the broader learning objectives, or the opportunity to allow participants to connect with each other, right? That opportunity for team building, the opportunity for peer-to-peer learning, the opportunity for just de-isolating, right? Every job in education has a risk of isolation in it, right? Whether you're a teacher, a counselor, a principal, a superintendent, anywhere up the chain, right? If you are the kind of the buck stops with you to some degree, then you're going to be feeling you have the opportunity to feel alone in that moment and stressed. And that loneliness, as we know, right, can kill. I mean, I hate to overstate it, but the loneliness is a horrible thing. And the opportunity to de-isolate, the opportunity to address well-being can be a sub-objective of this modality because of the engagement factor, because of the engagement with stories. Many of you may have seen the neuroscience webinar we did, I guess it was last year now. If you haven't seen it, please go see the recording. In terms of the opportunity that this modality provides, just from a neuroscience perspective, the engagement in stories, the connection with others, we can get into that. And anybody's interested, obviously you can tell it doesn't take much to wind me up. So happy to chat with you further about that at any point in time. So I think that's it for the updates. Any thoughts, questions? Anything being prompted?
Nothing in chat yet, but yeah, anytime throughout the presentation, please feel free to chat questions or raise your hand.
Please. Although I could probably go on and talk about this for hours and hours and hours. We'd like to actually hear from you. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Brent to share a little bit about kind of what we're doing relative to some simulation data.
Brent, before you go there, can you show me where on the SchoolSims website you can access the webinars?
Sure. So first of all, in the portal, right? This is the bigger version, not the version that you have.
Okay.
Brent, direct me. Where is it? Where am I not seeing it?
But you're logged in right now as a super administrator, so it's not showing up. But
It's not
anyone
showing.
who is
Okay.
logged in as a regular portal administrator will find a link right there that says webinars, and
Okay.
that will take you to information on upcoming webinars as well as recordings from past sessions for you.
Thank you.
And from the regular website, it's under resources. Under resources webinars. And then you can just scroll down. Any other questions, thoughts? And thank you for that. And by the way, the questions can be as technical or as conceptual as you'd like them to be. So please, this is a really, again, we're very interested in any thoughts, questions. If things are not clear to you, then that's obviously a point that we need to be careful about in terms of making sure that it's clear. So please feel free to ask any questions that you have. But Brent, go ahead.
Thanks, Ken. I just want to take another opportunity to thank everyone for your time today. I see a lot of familiar faces, which is wonderful. Some faces or some names who I haven't had a chance to meet yet, but I'm grateful for your time today. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us. It is nice to be together in a larger setting so that we can go over a few things. I would like to encourage you to speak up and ask questions. I'd like to take a moment now to share a little bit of statistics that hopefully can assure you that we are listening and we are paying attention to feedback. And that's one of the main purposes today, is to hear your thoughts and listen to suggestions as far as where we can head next. On this slide, this is a recap of many of the simulations that were the most popular over the past month. As part of our commitment to being a good partner with you, we are paying attention to the data, and we want to be able to look at what's popular during different parts of the year so that we can offer suggestions for your content. You will notice on this slide that one of our relatively newer teacher sims, Managing Classroom Disruptions, was the most popular sim in 4 months out of the last 12 months. And that particular sim, as well as the entire Teacher Sims library, were the direct result of feedback from our clients who suggested that they would like to see more content related to in the classroom and teacher-oriented and handling situations within the classroom. So, feedback from our clients led us to that sim and the overall Teacher Sims library, and we're finding some great feedback and a good response to that. We can see that not only is it getting played frequently, but it's also receiving some good feedback and comments from the clients that are viewing it as well, which is super encouraging. We also are looking at numbers like this so that we can see, which simulations are popular in various times of the year. Obviously, administrator first week on the job is much more relevant in August than it is in April. So that's, one that's obvious. New teacher evaluation was the most popular simulation in December. At that point, the new teachers have had a few months on the job, and we're taking a look at how they're doing, and we want to be able to address them and work with them. So what we're trying to do by paying attention to the data as we're showing here is we want to be able to see, what not only is popular, but what's also receiving good feedback. So those are the sims that we can offer as suggestions for your content. If you would like to reach out because you are interested in some feedback for suggestions for a particular upcoming meeting or class or course, and you'd like some help, we're always available for that. If you see an area within our library where you see a void that you would like to see filled for content, we not only would be willing to listen to that topic, but we'd also love to work with you to create a sim in order to fill that void as well. So your feedback is very valuable, and we really appreciate all of the time that you spend not only with the sims, but interacting with us and allowing us to head in a positive direction. We want to be not only reactive to the data that we're seeing, but we also want to get out ahead of it and be proactive as far as charting our path where we're heading, so that we can maintain being valuable partners with you. I think, Ken, did we skip? I think there's a slide before that too. Was there one, the product? Yep. This shows as well, from our beginnings where we primarily focused on the leadership sims, and that still is, and I expect will continue to be a large part of our library. But we also, as I mentioned, we're reacting to feedback. The Teacher Sims is a library that is growing. You can see that over the past 2 years, that's actually grown to a large percentage of the simulations that we have available, and I expect that will continue based on the positive feedback that we are receiving. And then more recently, we've, as Ken mentioned earlier, we've added some simulations that are targeted more for the counseling program, and we're trying to add to that so that we can be more valuable for your counselors. The student-focused simulations on the slide that we showed a minute ago, those were, very popular in the Texas program that developed them. Our number of plays and the feedback we've gotten from the student-focused titles has been overwhelming, and we're really looking forward to continuing to explore into that, as well as the simulations dealing with independent schools. We realize that there is, some unique qualities for the independent schools, and we want to make sure that we can provide simulations that are applicable there as well. So just wanted to share, again, while we have some time together as a group, we wanted to share some of the types of things that we're seeing from data, and wanted to reassure you that we are continuing to monitor this, and we are looking forward to any information that you can provide to us as far as what you're seeing in classrooms, any feedback that you're receiving from students or colleagues, or any areas where, again, you see an area that we can fill. We would love to hear from you either today or in the coming weeks, if you would be willing to speak up and help us to chart where we're going and continue to provide value for your programs. So we do have some questions, I believe, that were pre-submitted that we would love to get to in a moment. And we also have some more information that we can share as far as responding to some questions that you may have, be that content related or technical related, but wanted to give an opportunity now. As I mentioned, if anyone has any questions about the information that we just addressed, we'd be happy to speak to that now, or we can get moving on into the questions that have arrived already, although we'd love to see some more come in. So please don't be shy about speaking up. That the whole intent of our session today is to hear from you and see what we can do to help you out. So does anyone have any questions that they wouldn't mind speaking up on right now? Yes, Emily, is that you with your hand up?
Yes, it's me.
Hi, Emily, how are you?
I'm doing well. How's everyone today?
We're doing great. Thank you so much for your time. It's great for you to be with us.
Absolutely. Thank you. My question I wanted to ask about for some of the simulations we've done this year, I've noticed that the score report, so to speak, like the information reports differently depending on the simulation that's taken. And I guess I was just my question for or thought for consideration is, do we have anything or can there be something that could kind of be used to help interpret the score feedback, like how it's being reported? And I guess my reason for asking that is because in some instances, we will use the simulation as a part of our interview process. And like, while I may have taken the simulation, you know, or have a general idea of it, if I've taken it before I give it to a candidate, the hiring manager may not have watched it before. So sometimes it's kind of hard for them to like understand what's going on, you know, from the score report. And I provide them like the overview and everything, and then I kind of try to talk them through. But I just remember there being some instances this year in which they thought, well, did they retake it? And I'm like, well, no, you know, because you can't go back in the simulation, so they didn't retake it. But this is just showing, like, you know, what thoughts they may have considered or what options they may have considered. So I guess, you know, in short, I'm just wondering, you know, would there be a way to be able to kind of provide some sample feedback for the score reports, you know, based on the simulation that's taken?
Yeah.
Did you catch all of that?
Yeah, Emily, that's great. And let me first say that I'm really excited to hear that you are using them as part of the interview process. We are hearing that more and more from clients, and I think that's wonderful. We are hopeful that this will be a valuable tool for you in that area. I will let Ken speak to that perhaps a little bit further, but in general, we try to allow the Sims to be a tool for you that you can push in the direction that you would need. So there may not be a specific right or wrong answer. However, your district or your program probably has some thoughts on the options that you would like to see the candidates choosing from. So in that case, you may want to create your own rubric in order to work from. But I think, Ken, you probably can speak to that a little bit further.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. Thanks, Emily. That's a great question. And you know, one of the things that is the issue with the variable reports, or the way we affectionately call scorecards sometimes, although it's misnamed, I guess, because that implies assessment.
Right.
And it's really not designed for, as you know, for assessment. So, but you pointing that out points to, and Brent, if we can note this, that we will write something up for the facilitator guide to go more deeply into describing that report. The important aspect of the report is the relative movement between the variables rather than the specifics of the variables, right? Because the goal of the report is to give you an insight into the interrelationship between the underlying trade-offs that were at play in the scenario. And so it's not whether you get, you know, you aced one or not. It's, well, this relative to that. And usually there is information in this, the narrative report about which variables were affected and how. So, but that uncertainty or that ambiguity is why not every sim has one of those reports because it is an important, it's a challenging component. And in fact, one of the things that I also wanted to share that we will probably be adding at some point to the facilitator materials. So this is actually something we're using now on the development side. But one of the challenges has been is for people to really wrap their heads around what is that? When we're trying to design a sim, you know, a little inside baseball here, right? So if you're interested in thinking about a new sim, so this is one of the activities that we try to do is thinking about what those underlying trade-offs are. What makes this problem a problem, right? What are those underlying things that we struggle with in making decisions that we want to highlight in the choices, right? The choice options should reflect different aspects of the trade-offs that relate to what we would do, not what we should do necessarily, although that's something that we may want to capture, but certainly what we do, right? So we want to, those choice options should reflect those variables that we think are at play in that choice. And then also, one of the things that comes from that is when you make that choice, that drives a consequence, right? So something is going to happen, and often what we want to capture that happens is the negative part of the trade-off we selected, right? There's going to be a positive side to a trade-off and a negative side to a trade-off. We want to both allow for the positive, but also to demonstrate the negative, because you need to experience the blowback, or our students need to experience the blowback, the negative consequences, so you're prepared for those as well. What this page does is actually capture 1 page worth of a whole bunch of different leadership variables. And we're going to try and do this one for teaching as well. But these are a variety of things that may be at play in any particular scenario that we may be reflecting upon. And we can call it a whole bunch of different things. Obviously, we've got the P-cell standards, but beyond that, there's going to be a whole bunch of things that could be at play. And it's something to think about. And this can actually be then an activity that you have students reflect upon. What was going on in that simulation that you played? What were some of the variables that were at play that you struggled with, or that you tried to harness, that are either leadership oriented or team oriented, managing self, managing others, a variety of things that are at play, but just to prompt that thinking. And again, coming back to that granularity issue, whether it's in emotions or in kind of understanding the challenges that we're going to face, again, by giving it a name, by calling it something, it allows us to let the air out, to some degree, let some of the air out so that we feel less at risk. And so the opportunity to engage from this perspective, hopefully that answered is a really long-winded answer to your question, Emily. But just to give you some insight into our thinking about how to make this easier, or how to leverage this even when it's not necessarily in the sim. Did that help?
Yes, it's helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, thoughts? So we can get to the questions that were submitted. Somebody, I don't recall who, but submitted the instances in which school sims are being used as evidence for meeting accreditation standards for CAEP. So funny you should ask that. I'm not sure he's on the call, but we are partnering with, we are in the process of developing a capability around this in which the qualitative responses in the sims can actually be assessed, and then create a report, and that this would go into a CAEP assessment. And we're working with the university right now on this process. CAEP is aware of it. And so it's part of that. And so we'll see, again, how it continues to go. But the capability is being developed. So in terms of being able to harness large language models, AI, to be able to look at data that is coming from qualitative data that's inside the sim, right? So again, when you know, even to Emily's question, right, when you're using it in the interview, it may not be so much what people choose to do, but why they chose to do it, right? I had a talk with a principal some years ago. They were using the dress code sim. So many of you on the leadership side will know the dress code sim. And they wanted to use that as part of the interviewing process. And we said, sure. This was before they were asking if it was a different use than we had originally spoken about. So of course we said yes. And the feedback that we got from them, because I said you could absolutely use it, but I want to hear how it went. And so what they found was that in the dress code sim, that both of the candidates selected, now I'm forgetting which one they selected. They both selected the same choice, which was not a good choice in terms of dealing with the dress code initially. And it then gave them the opportunity to ask each of them why they made that choice. And one of the candidates' response was not a good choice. The other one, based on the way they processed their previous experiences to explain why they chose that, actually made a lot of sense. And in terms of the judgment that was exercised, gave them great insight into the thought process of this particular candidate. And so they used it from that perspective. It was very valuable to get at that, how they think, as opposed to what they actually chose to do. So in terms of being able to utilize the sim, and that's how we write them, right? It really is to provoke that thinking, not to give an obvious answer. But anyway, so the long answer to the first question is yes, we are going down that path, and look for, we will share more information towards over the course of the second half of the year as that becomes more available and it gets actually tested. So please watch for that. Any thoughts, questions on that? You are all making me feel like I'm so clear, and I know that I'm not. My wife tells me that I'm never this clear. So anyway, the second question then, do you anticipate AI being used to respond to users' choice or more specifically to their written responses in those simulations that require a written response? So we are keeping tabs on what's going on with AI and the applications of it. And I will hand this to Brian to speak more directly to that.
Sure. Thanks, Ken. So we are actually in the process of implementing AI through Amazon Web Services tools, which I think is called Gemini, their version, which is ChatGPT rebranded, to evaluate free text. That'll be part of what we're doing for CAEP. So we will have that capability, and we are evaluating inside of the company what to do with that data as it happens, as people are playing through the simulation and enter free text, what to do with that. So for example, do we put a custom screen on based on feedback from the free text? Do we play a whole different scenario? So we're working through that. But this is one of the reasons for this meeting, is to get ideas and see what would be helpful. So, just to recap that, we do have the capability coming this month to evaluate free text using AI. So our responses are going into the learning language module, which is sort of how AI is driven. The question now is, outside of what we're doing for CAEP and other accrediting bodies, what will we do inside the sim with that AI? So that's what we're trying to evaluate and looking for feedback on.
Thank you. And obviously, this is an evolving challenge with the opportunities with AI and using it well, but certainly the opportunities to engage in this way, and what opportunities it opens up. And so this actually, along those lines, are there plans for simulation topics around data-driven instruction? So there is one, I'm not sure, I don't remember again who asked that question. I don't know if you're actually on the webinar today. There is the data-driven counseling, which again, it's not instruction, it is data-driven. Obviously, this is something that we are interested in exploring. So certainly if there are, if anybody is interested and you have a particular scenario or concept in which you'd like to see this applied that can be handled in a simulation context, we'd love to speak with you further about that. So please let us know. But again, going back to the other, those leadership variables, again, once you have the shared experience in a sim and say classroom sim, right, you can extrapolate from the sim to ask this question about data. Which data are important? What would you do with the data in this context? What data would you look for with this particular student? Those are the kinds of questions that where you can harness, again, thinking of the simulation as the hub and not the entire wheel, right? So it's around which you can then populate different things that support the broader learning objectives, but don't necessarily need to be embedded in the sim. So in terms of being able to harness the modality to address this, possibly, but again, we'd want to go deeper in terms of understanding what it is you're trying to get at in terms of data-driven instruction, and what are some of the challenges that you see that you would like to see captured in this, where critical thinking is required around what data to use, what you do with the data once you get it, how do you navigate that when you've got all this data per student in a classroom context or in a building context, depending on the role that we're looking at. Those are the kinds of things we want to unpack relative to putting that into a simulation format. So we do have, these are things, in fact, one of the new sims that I'll let you know that we're working on is going to be kind of a follow-on to the leading STEM simulation. We had the idea of having kind of a continued experience, if you will. So that one's looking at this, designing strategically for the district, how you're going to respond to integrating STEM more deeply, more broadly into the curriculum. And then we're going to kind of pick up after that. So if this has been, decisions been made to highlight more STEM components in a school, what is the implications to a teacher in terms of making the changes relating to that new strategy, so that the new simulation is actually going to pick up from that point. So we'll keep you posted on that, but that's a new teacher sim. We've got some family engagement sims that we're looking at potentially fleshing out, again, from the teacher perspective. We have some new equity sims that we're orienting towards curriculum assessment and instruction, and also equity-centered leadership, which on the leadership side will be coming. So in terms of looking at this range of topics, and again, always looking for new opportunities to explore, but those are the kinds of, and again, using data is certainly something that can manifest inside of those, because, again, the data has to be in service of something, would be the opportunity to further our development as well. Any other questions, thoughts, people want to share? One other thing that I will highlight while I'm going to fill up the space so as not to have too much silence, is that we are also, in addition to developing new sims, we are also spending time refreshing the existing sims and updating them. Some of the older sims, obviously, as you know, have less media to update those, and some we need to keep up with the times, right? Because language has evolved. Some of the problems of practice have also evolved in terms of how they manifest. And if you see something that needs to be pointed out, please let us know, because sometimes, obviously, as you go through the various decision points, decision paths, it's always interesting to see how they're experienced, right? They're written with a certain intent, but obviously they're heard in the manner of the listener and how they perceive it and their filters. Now, that is an opportunity if students get triggered, if you will. It opens up the opportunity for discussion, right? Because that presents the opportunity to ask the question, why? What is it about this scenario that affected you? Because usually, or very often, right, that is built on a lived experience, right? That person had that would be critical for others to know, because there may be others that they engage with who will have that kind of lived experience. And so having that insight, which would normally not come, can be had in this kind of conversation. And because of the power, again, coming back to the neuroscience side, the opportunity in simulation, because it's story driven, if you buy into the research that shows that oxytocin flows as a result of engaging in a story, which means we're more generous and trusting to those we're engaged with, which means even when something triggers us, we may have the ability to engage in a thoughtful way because we're feeling generous and trusting to the people that we're engaging with. And so the opportunity to get these kinds of, even if they're confrontational conversations, on the table so that the insights can be gleaned, so the insights can be understood and shared, is something that can obviously be a very powerful learning opportunity, both for the faculty, but also for the students, the participants, the leaders, the teachers, et cetera, in that sharing kind of approach. So we certainly, and if this happens, by the way, we'd love to hear about it. And that's something that, as Brent mentioned, and as Emily mentioned, in terms of use cases, if you're using Sims in what you think is a creative way, we'd love to hear about it. Because we know what we know, but we don't know what you know unless you tell us. And having that opportunity to hear and to share with others is something that we value tremendously, right? We are very interested in the sharing and discussion opportunity. So please, by all means, feel free to share if you will. And we'd love to, again, both engage with you about it and potentially share it beyond with others as well. Okay, well, I can certainly, I'm hoping that this was provided insight. There are some other questions that if you have technical questions, I do want to point out that, you know, if there is a question of usage, if you hear it from one of your staff, from one of your team, from administrators, from faculty, from adjuncts, from whoever it is, there's no question that's too small to reach out to us. You can obviously reach out to Brent or any of the team who's involved in the onboarding. You can reach out to me. Anytime that you have questions, please let us know. We're always happy to engage, and it could be technical, use of the portal, sharing the Sims, whatever the case may be, by all means. We can either we can answer the question and also point you to where the resources might be so that if others have that question, that you have access to that. But it really is important that there not be kind of that obstacle in the way of implementing that is just a question. And so as much as possible, we're going to try to be in touch with you if questions come up. If updates come up, that we'll be reaching out to you periodically, but also you can reach out to us because we'd love to hear from you. So I think that if, lastly, if you wouldn't mind giving us some additional feedback, if you could take this survey, follow the QR code, we'd love to hear from you and get your feedback on this. And otherwise, we'll look forward to, please watch for upcoming webinars. We'll be highlighting some new Sims or highlighting new methods as we progress over the course of the year. One of the things that we're looking to do, if it's okay to share this, we're looking to get Act 48 credit, certainly in Pennsylvania, for the teacher simulations. We have in Pennsylvania Act 45 credits through the Pennsylvania Principals Association. So if that's something that in your states that needs to happen, that's something we'd certainly be, we'd love to be able to participate with you with an accrediting body in terms of enabling for the continuing education requirements that your various participants may have. And with that, I will leave it open to questions. But thank you for your participation and look forward to connecting with you all soon.
Yeah, thank you everybody for your time. We appreciate it. I'm happy to stay on for any chat questions, or I'm sure you all know how to reach us. You should be getting periodic emails from Brent or maybe Sam now. So don't hesitate to ask any questions. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
And have a great summer.